Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to all our friends from all over the world. I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the Lutheran World Federation, the Network for Religious and Traditional Peacemakers, and the World Council of Churches for this special webinar on youth as agents of change, promoting interfaith solidarity in the time of pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic. My name is Reverend Dr. Sivan Kit, and I'd like to welcome all of you to our session today. Now, just as a start, I'd like to invite all of you to, you can introduce yourselves, but when you do, please click to, please click to all panelists and attendees. Now, as you do that, I also would like to remind all of you, if you're tweeting or if you're doing anything like that, our hashtag is hashtag youth for solidarity. Now, when you introduce yourself, please also state your name, where you are from, what organization, and for those of you who are willing, do let us know whether you're below 30 so that we know how many youth participants we have for today. So we're really very excited for this session, and I'm going to introduce my friend and new colleague. Her name is Jessica Roland, and she's our moderator for today. Jessica is the Senior Specialist for Inclusive Peace, and she's from the network, and she will be introducing herself and our panelists. So do remember, when you are, we will have opportunities to discuss. You can post your questions in the chat, introduce yourselves, and of course, if you're tweeting, hashtag youth for solidarity. So I'm going to pass the time over to you, Jessica, and you can introduce our panelists.
Thank you, Sivan. And welcome, everyone, and thank you all for joining us today in this timely and important discussion on youth as agents of change and promoting interfaith solidarity during COVID-19. My name is Jessica Roland, and I am the Senior Specialist for Inclusive Peace at the Network for Religious and Traditional Peacemakers, and I'm the moderator for today's discussion. The evidence is clear. Young people can and do drive positive social change with powerful ripple effects that fuel progress on many levels in any context. When young people are engaged in meaningful and authentic ways, they share the power and the responsibility for success. They become partners, not just beneficiaries, in a community's health, prosperity, security, and sustainability. Working together with young people is an imperative for those who have the courage to challenge inequities, shift power, and drive real progress in advancing peace and solidarity. Today, I feel honored to moderate a discussion with 3 young activists who have been working to advance interfaith solidarity during these challenging times within the COVID-19 pandemic. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our first panelist, Marilyne Chitri, who serves on the Religions for Peace Youth Media team and is based in South Africa. She is affiliated with various faith organizations, including the Hindu Youth Network of South Africa, the Religions for Peace Global Youth Network, and the African Interfaith Youth Network. She's an outspoken advocate of environmental sustainability and interfaith work, and as a trained architectural technologist, has focused on developing social and sustainable architecture. She is followed by our second panelist, Fernando Sihoteng, who is the coordinator for human rights and advocacy within the Indonesian National Committee of the Lutheran World Federation. He has a master's degree in human rights, and during the last 8 years, besides addressing various contextual issues arising from living in a Muslim-majority context, he is also engaged in key initiatives in promoting religious tolerance, working together with young people and interfaith partners. Finally, our third panelist is Kosar Mahmoudi, who is the project coordinator for the Muslim Youth Forum in Finland. She has a Master of Sciences degree in economics and is involved in different projects and working groups related to preventing violent extremism. She works as a business lecturer and degree program leader at the University of Applied Sciences. So we have a couple of rounds of questions for all of our panelists before we go into our Q&A portion of the discussion. I encourage all of our panelists to offer any comments at any time if you feel you want to interject to help make this a lively discussion. So, a first question for you all. What best practices have you found most effective in promoting interreligious solidarity and cooperation during the COVID-19 pandemic? I first turn to you, Marilyne.
Namaste, G, great day everyone. So thank you for this opportunity. So for me personally, because all of my work has been online through the Religions for Peace Youth Media team, it has opened a different way for me to communicate and learn with other dedicated, passionate youth from around the world. I've been exploring fun and exciting ways to engage with the youth through social media, whether it's platforms like Zoom, Instagram, Facebook, Google Meet, Slack, Microsoft Teams, or Twitter. And it has increased my work and allowed me to connect virtually with so many people globally quickly, and then on the physical ground level. Since April, I've done over 45 online interfaith webinars through Religions for Peace, African Women of Faith Network, African Council of Religious Leaders, even the African Interfaith Youth Network. And recently I had to do a yearly stat for Religions for Peace South Africa. And so that's how I discovered that I've been involved in like so many online interfaith webinars. So I actually lost count of how many Zoom meetings, and I still got more webinars lined up. But what I can say is that this has opened up so many opportunities for me to continue to promote interfaith solidarity online during these COVID times. So networking is very important, building relationships and friendships. And I've made so many interfaith friends around the world, and all from my bedroom in COVID isolation.
Thank you. 45 and counting. That's impressive.
Yes, 45 and counting.
How about you, Fernando?
Yes, thank you, Jessica. Okay, first of all, I need to emphasize that COVID-19 pandemic has been disrupting all aspects of lives in our context, and also happening in other contexts as well, not only involving the health issues, but much more largely affecting economic and social lives of the people. So when we did our research on the impacts of pandemic on the precarious people in our province in Indonesia, we found that millions of people lost their jobs, closing off their small shops, having no foods in their hand, and leaving their children untaught because having no appropriate internet access for attending distance learning. So, so COVID-19 taught all people of faith to reflect on that everyone can be unexceptionally affected by the virus and its disrupting impacts. Doctrinal and spiritual differences are left away during this time. Instead, people join hand in hand to support each other. So we found this is some activities that we have done so far for 8 months already. That activities we have done so far are very effective opportunities to introduce new ways of collecting people of different faiths and religions to see commonalities instead of debating our given differences. So we have, first we create meeting spaces for all people of faith to talk about the differences and identify what common language of togetherness we should care for. And also we put away stigmatization and prioritization of religions, and realizing that we ourselves have to blame ourselves for creating disasters, for instance. And also secondly, we do actions beyond the scope of interfaith cooperations, but interfaith communion to do common search for justice, peace, and equal freedom. So we talk a lot about cross-cutting issues like education, anti-sexual harassment bills, which are now being addressed by legislators, and also about mining issues, making petitions, addressing corruption, terrorism, and so on. And also we do some delivering some literacy education about our own diversity and multiculturalism. And also we promote, we promote friendship approach as a cultural way of dealing with interfaith relations. Last but not least, we involve intergenerational approach as a way of strengthening partnership between different generations and also institutions like church with governments, with CSOs, with religious leaders, because youth also needs strong support from all different groups and platforms. Thank you.
Thank you. And it's really important that you raised that social impact and how everything is interlinked, whether it be the technology gap, whether it be the rise in violence against women, whether it be education, all of those, and how they're interlinked because of the pandemic and how it's been exacerbated. Kosar, how about you in Finland?
Hi everyone, and greetings from Finland. It's already very dark outside, even though it's 4 p.m., but I'm happy to be here with you today. So I'm going to talk about what good practices we have faced here in Finland about this during this pandemic. So maybe the biggest thing is that we are all in this together. So the COVID-19 has brought the organization, the religious communities, the authorities all together, because we all have the desire to promote peace and security in this world. And walking side by side builds the connection and combats the prejudice and the hate speech. And here in Finland, we have had more close cooperation now during the pandemic. And we have this National Forum for Cooperation of Religions in Finland, which is called CORE Forum, that has organized several webinars, attended discussion events with the authorities, peace walks, wearing the mask, of course, giving different statements, etc. And youth has also had a part in this too. And we have had several discussion events with NGOs, communities, and authorities. And the best way for us has been that it has been the open discussion. And now the COVID-19 has made it possible for a lot of people to attend these events. And with these different religious communities, we have all united, and we are providing assistance for those who are most vulnerable in cooperation with the authorities and municipalities. For example, by having this information about the pandemic in different languages and so on. And we had, during the Ramadan, we had the Ramadan greeting videos made by the Finnish Council of State and mayors of different cities, which promotes the solidarity during this pandemic. And I believe the same will happen during the other religious holidays here in Finland. And when it comes to promote interfaith solidarity among youth, it's the fact that youth people will participate and take responsibility of their own, and of course the community's future, when they pursue the success themselves and based on their own values. So the organization that I'm active, the NMF, is the youth-led organization, and we have had, for example, podcasts during this year, which gives the youth the opportunity to use their own voice. And I also believe that it's very important to create this open environment where the young people will get answers to their puzzling questions and give them the opportunity to share their thoughts with adults. And there have been discussion here in Finland that we should, how we should create this kind of space, for example, in schools, because the schools is a perfect place to get the wider so-called audience with like a wider scale. And this is something that we will still continue discussing.
Thank you. Let me just first of all say from that first round, it's really inspiring all the work that all of you have been accomplishing during, lockdown periods and challenging times of just being able to be near each other, whether it be through podcasts or webinars or even in-person talks with masks, of course. You're running circles around a lot of us. So thank you for being so inspiring and sharing your work. Fernando, you raised an important point in your first comment about engaging communities online and this problem of the technology gap. So a question that I have for you all, starting with you, Fernando, is what do you want people to know most about engaging communities online in promoting interfaith solidarity?
Yes, first of all, let me talk about another side of having online at the moment for our, as a main medium of our communication. Obviously, there are some negative and positive sides of seeing internet citizens in this fascinating technology era, particularly in the time of COVID-19 pandemic, which forces many people, of course, to do most of their activities online at home. So in Indonesia, in our context, we have seen the rise of conservatism, intolerance, and also extremism in the name of religions have gone up because of domination of hatred and resentment narratives on social media. Please bear in mind that internet users in Indonesia alone currently reach around 196 million, as of November 2020, having increased 21 million users from 175 million users in February 2020, just before the pandemic. So this huge number of internet users can lead the society in to be susceptible on one hand, but can also be a positive influence on the other. It depends on which hand is stronger to dominate the public space. So in order to tackle the hegemony of hatred and resentment in the cyberspace, interfaith solidarity, once again, is very crucially needed to occupy the public space with positive and optimistic narratives. So during the COVID-19, we and then young people and also some other generational groups, we learned together some new phenomena which I regard as opportunities. First, engaging communities online can be reaching out more people. So now, I mean, COVID-19 is the opportunity to see the current, to engage more ordinary people to get attached to addressing various societal concerns by using online platforms. So last time, discussion about social politics, about interfaith, we're only targeting people who are very active in interfaith dialogue, interfaith platform. But now, ordinary people can also be joining the discussion and dialogues, even though they don't have any backgrounds in social or any other legal perspective, for instance. And secondly, engaging our communities online can also unlearn intolerance. This is very important. I would like to emphasize to unlearn intolerance. So we utilize internet facilities to conduct various trainings, such as training on freedom of religion or belief 3-4 months ago, and for young religious leaders from different religions and also beliefs, including atheists. You know, because atheists are not allowed in Indonesia, but we include also them, and training also on diversity literacy. Thirdly, we play roles in the public space. So we engage communities online in our context because we believe that they are very powerful nowadays as campaigning tools to monitor issues in the public space, because we experience the power of internet citizens to criticize the police, the governments, for their slow action to protect religious minorities whose religious freedom rights are deprived of by groups of intolerant people. So during the pandemic, we have experienced violations of freedom of religion or belief, especially those who are members of minority groups, and also those who are called as infidels. So they are being deprived of having free and safe worship in their own place. Fourthly, engaging on communities online can also inspire people through stories. So online communities bring tons of positive stories from across the nation and also across the globe during this pandemic on how solidarity works out beyond borders and also walls. So let us be optimistic that these positive stories have taught in exclusive communities or individuals to unlearn intolerance when seeing such positive and encouraging stories. Last but not least, of course, engaging communities online can connect and bridge people. So last time we built many, young people young Christians young Lutheran Christians, Lutheran youth in Indonesia. With the help of the Lutheran Church of Australia, we built many internet towers at 4 villages to support children to get access to distance learning. You know, because nowadays children are being suggested to learn from home, but many of them do not have access to internet, and also they cannot afford to pay the internet. So we provide that towers, but and then we spread the stories through social media, and some Indonesians abroad got inspired to build more towers in the villages where no internet access available, and also to support those who cannot afford the cost of internet to study. That's the power of engaging communities online.
Yeah, I mean, it's an important point that you raise. The internet has posed both new opportunities and challenges at the same time in trying to promote interfaith solidarity online. Kosar, what do you think? Do you find similarities or differences in the Finnish context?
I would say I find quite a lot of similarities with what Fernando just said, but we actually all have the access to internet, but we have the other similar challenges that Fernando already mentioned, and when we think about being online and now especially during the COVID-19, the being physically present in each other's company is more fruitful. We get more out of it when we see each other. We can actually see how we react to different things. But this pandemic have forced us to go online, and since we are basically stuck between four walls, so we have to think about what are the great opportunities and benefits that the online brings with it. And hosting events online, not just discussions, but other events as well, such as bringing people of different faith to pray and meditate together, and by utilizing platforms that are used internationally, for example, Zoom. This is not a paid ad then, but for example, Zoom. It's a great way to get the people to come to one place and have a discussion, or for example, meditate or pray together, and it helps the individual to actually to learn about the communities through the online interfaith gatherings without being self-conscious or feeling that they are being under a peer pressure. And having these online events, it's like the threshold to attend it is very low, and it also eliminates the traveling cost and the time that is used for the traveling, and people can attend directly from their homes, which is actually a very positive thing. And also the online offers the opportunity that the information is available to everyone, and it's not time or location dependent. Of course, this brings the negative side, what Fernando already mentioned, and it's also important to provide the information, the service, the event, or whatever it may be in the language that the community actually understands the best, so they will actually feel that the belonging. And unfortunately, the downside of this is that everything is online. So just for example, for my own personal experience, now spending the whole day in front of the computer, my brain is not that sharp anymore, and I don't feel like the concentration is much lower. But I do see the light at the end of the tunnel, and when we go back to the so-called normal life, the online is here to stay. But and therefore we should think about how we can use it in the future as well. So implementing, for example, this kind of hybrid way of organizing events, so some of them are on site and some of them online, is a great way to make sure that those who are not able to attend on site still have the opportunity to attend it and don't feel that they are left out.
Jessica, can I add a bit before you go to Marilyne?
Please.
Yes, another thing that I would like to add about engaging communities online. So we were think we think that this online process now that we are doing, we call this learning while earning. So we ask people to learn about peace, about justice, about human rights, while on the at the other time, while they can also earn, they can also work from their homes, from everywhere, so they can just access internet from their smartphone, and then also learn about things that that happen nowadays. So yeah.
Thank you. That's a very important point to raise. Marilyne, what about you? South Africa is very diverse and has a whole host of its own issues. How about you? Do you find similarities or differences in what's being said?
So I find a lot of similarities. Like Fernando brought up about the internet problems. Like I have that as a big issue, and especially during COVID, a lot of people are unemployed. I didn't have work for 4 months. So my activities, like just to engage into interfaith solidarity online, was much tougher for me because I had to not every activity where you be given internet data. So you have to find ways and means to still engage and try to do your work and try to still make it happen. And also, like Kosher said, I'm also an architect and 3D designer, so everything I do now is just sitting in front of the computer. I don't know when I've seen sunlight, daylight. I'm just always in front of my computer. I'm engaging in meditations, in online webinars, and then it's still trying to do my graphic design work and architecture work. So it does get a bit overwhelming at times, where you end up with migraines and you're spending late nights in front of your computer. So I do find the similarities there, but also, like Fernando pointed out, there's the negatives and the positives, and you've got to unlearn intolerance. So the way you engage with people is very important, because it's also easy to be misunderstood and misquoted online. And things can go wrong very quickly as well, because you will meet all kinds of people with different perspectives or perceptions about interfaith issues. So your intentions, your outcomes, your goals, and what you want to achieve has to be all holistic, in keeping with your faith ideals and values. Because we have experienced how social media, if used in the wrong context, can bring about hate speech, strife, discrimination, as our actions causes ripples of consequences, because we don't live in isolation in the virtual world as well. So the way we present ourselves to the world, the interfaith and interfaith messages we wish to share with everyone, our faith work that is in actions, and the presence and character that we have, our inner light plays a big part to make a positive difference, and is a service to help others as well. So it's also important to be yourself, because everyone is unique and special and have something divine to contribute to the interfaith work. So listening to each other is also important. How we talk to each other is important. And it can also turn to become really fun and exciting, and at the same time has a serious tone to your message to mobilize people through inspiration. And I'll give an example is we had a Religions for Peace woman First Assembly conference on faith and diplomacy a few weeks ago. And we were all supposed to be in Lindau, Germany as the youth media team to report this conference, but everything had to be canceled because the COVID increased in Germany. So everything turned into an online conference. Our training with DWA, media training, everything had to turn into online. But even though we were online with each other every day on Zoom, the media training was still so fun. We found fun ways to engage with each other, to learn from each other, to share with each other. So we turned it into such an amazing experience that I felt like, hey, even though I'm in this online world, and experiencing this online conference, even though with all the challenges of trying to navigate work, family life, still do the interfaith solidarity work, it still can be fun, and it still can be great to be together and network with each other. So we are here to inspire each other, so that's why I say it's important to be yourself, be unique, be special. You have something divine to contribute, and your work can be fun, exciting, and also to inspire, learn from each other. And we want to build a different world, one of peace and unity, right? So we have to have perseverance, determination, and love and passion for what we do. The small steps to change is just as important as the big ones. So we need to stand up for long-term goals and see that, hey, even though I'm sitting behind my computer and I'm doing this, but there's a long-term goal here. There's something that I want to achieve from my work. So I always say that people of faith are people of love, because all their actions are centered on the divine, and they come from a place of love and wanting to change this world and to contribute positively to the world. So always shine this divine love through all your actions, intentions, and thoughts, and it'll make your work effective on another level, because you'll be guided by your faith values. And I read an amazing quote the other day, just to end off this question. And it said that darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. And it was by Martin Luther King. Yeah.
I love quotes, and I love that quote. So thank you for sharing. And you raised an important point. Self-care is so important during this time, and making sure that all of this hard work that we're all doing, that they're also feeling that solidarity amongst each other. And then I'm really grateful that you all are really sharing that. I hope the audience can feel that from you today. I can't help but sometimes look into the webinar chat of some of the questions that are coming through, and I keep seeing some of these issues. And it's funny, you all mentioned this in your conversations with me about the desire to reach more people and communities outside of our bubble in this sector. And a lot of people in the chat have been asking about, how do we go in, about ensuring that we're not leaving anyone behind or being inclusive. So, with refugees having, a hard time accessing online or other grassroots communities. And, I just want to pose this to whoever would like to answer in this discussion. How do we go about doing that? How do we make sure that we're leaving no one behind? Are you all engaging, some of these communities in your work? I leave it to whoever would like to answer.
So for me, I would say that in terms of refugees, I attended a United Nations webinar through Religions for Peace on refugees. And it's still in the early phases where religious leaders were coming together to talk about how we can help them during COVID and what we can do on the ground level after COVID as well. So there was a lot of issues that were raised, but it was a discussion where we were seeing us as faith leaders and us as religious leaders, and we are like the caretakers of society. So we were trying to brainstorm and come up with strategies and solutions together on how we can implement what works and what doesn't work, and then how we can use it to help refugees. But in terms of like me being online and engaging one-on-one with refugees, I haven't encountered that yet so far.
Can I answer?
Go ahead.
Yes, good question, actually. So in spite of discrimination, which is still encountered by people in our context here, so many people have been discriminated because of their chosen religions or beliefs. So interfaith solidarity should stand in the front line to support those who are excluded in the society. So especially during this hard time, people from minority groups in particular are precariously deprived of to have appropriate access to their economic rights, for instance. Like this pandemic, so in our recent research, so we found like nearly 60% of Indonesian people are working in the informal sectors. They lost their jobs. They closed off their shops because no one was buying in the beginning of the pandemic. So they cannot afford to buy rice, not bread like in Europe or in United States, but we buy rice. So no, and then also some women we interview, they cannot buy, they could not buy milk for their babies. So so they actually need immediate assistance, social assistance from the government. But sometimes, and also this is exposed publicly, that in some areas, local governments are doing some bad things, like like corruption, and then it's becoming it's preventing the social assistance to be appropriately given to the needy. So people of faith through interfaith solidarity should stand for justice and ensure that no one should be left behind. This discriminatory regulations and policy implementation must always be monitored in order to make sure that everyone is well served. So like since in the last few months, interfaith groups have been joining hands in hands to monitor laws, discriminatory laws, and also a practice of regulations which were done by the governments without respecting the rights of the communities, of the people. So interfaith groups were hand in hands to criticize the governments, and also to ask to call on the governments to be more just, and also serving the citizens appropriately.
Thank you for both for answering those questions. Kosar, I actually have a new question for you, if you don't mind. So in about a week's time, we have the 5th anniversary of the Youth, Peace and Security Agenda, which focuses on 5 pillars, one being partnership. And my question for you is, what partnerships would you find most helpful now in continuing to advance your work in promoting peace and solidarity, and what silos do you wish you could break?
Thank you. That's a very good question, and I try to keep my answer short. But what I see is that the young people need a seat at the table when it comes to the decision-making meetings, and maybe also letting the youth know that everything doesn't always need to be so official. And by official, I mean when a young person is invited to a meeting, it's fine if he or she doesn't use exactly the correct terms, or that giving, or that the young people have the image that now that they are attending this meeting, they have to already have a ready solution to save the world. But more like be there, be part of it, and give their voice to be heard as well. And it's also important to organize different discussion events where the authorities, where the youth actually themselves are the one who are in the center. And the youth needs to feel that they are actually heard, and instead of just, having nodding heads after a speech, but really involve the youth and take actions. And you ask also what silo I wish I could break. Well, I can say 2 different things. One is having more youth organization involved when it comes to peace building and interfaith solidarity. They have the best sources when it comes to reach the youth when they are the target persons group, and youth organization understands the actual needs when we are talking about the youth. And I'm highlighting the actual needs because that's something that the decision makers also need to know, that they every time they don't know that what are the actual needs if they don't hear it, what is actually in the grassroots level. And maybe the second silo that I wish to break is to have more cross-sector partnerships. I wrote my master thesis on cross-sector partnerships in disaster management. And even though I was focusing more on the private sector and how the companies can build their dynamic capabilities through cross-sector partnerships, in order to successfully tackle the challenges in the time of crisis, it's very vital that to have the private, the public, and the third sector, and also the communities working all together. And also in my work, I found out the role of community especially has a huge impact on when it comes to the time of crisis. And so that's why I think it's very important to have these cross-sector partnerships more. It's nice that when we talk about, for example, this UN funding application, when they have this open funding where organizations and communities can apply for funding for their initiatives, it's very good that they also have to need some sort of consortium together, and then they kind of like apply together, and this encourage to collaboration and have more partnerships. So that's basically how I view this topic.
Yes, thank you. Promoting cross-sectoral partnerships is key in breaking these silos, as you said, and I love the phrase which you were getting at, the "nothing about us without us," in getting the opinions and the desires of what youth are wanting in their desire for change. And I have one of my favorite questions for Marilyne. And I love this question, as always. What inclusive elements or strategies have you been incorporating in your work to connect with communities most hard to reach which I want to hear about, with women and young women or individuals with disabilities?
Okay. So on the ground, like before COVID, we go into rural areas and we have programs, right? But because now it's COVID and everything is online, so we had to think differently and strategize different to take this into an online way. So I want to share an example of what we did, and we can share my a few pictures from my PowerPoint. Okay. So as the youth media team, the example that we implemented as youth during COVID was using the platform of Zoom, right? So we approached the thing called e-conferencing. And this strategy was targeted to empower young and senior women, right? So if we go to the next slide, thank you. Right. So especially women in Africa, they have challenges to share their interfaith work because their knowledge on social media technologies are limited. Okay. So what we did was we used the technology of Zoom and we connected with women in Africa to empower them so that they know how to use social media, they know how to use it in a positive way, and they can share their interfaith work with everybody. So we as the youth, because we had this training with DWA and we know the ins and outs of the technology, we did a social media training for women in Africa to empower them. So our theory content covered, you can see the next, you can change to the next slide, thank you. So our theory content covered what is social media, why use it, what are the benefits and challenges and common sense to using it, what makes for a good post, how can we use social media as a business tool to help build the future, especially for women and youth that are faced with unemployment during COVID-19, because there's many ways to use social media as a business tool. So we covered practical aspects on how to use basic tools to promote our work as email, WhatsApp, Facebook, Twitter, simple things like how to win zip files and to use Google Photos, because older women and younger women have this as a challenge for them, right? Especially during COVID, and our work is now online. So, and then we discussed the important rules for social media and what is your role as a religious woman and a faith leader on social media. And then if you can go to the next slide, thank you. And then we looked for strategies that we can globally replicate for training, for a training by anyone. So we said that, we should collaborate in partnership with other networks. Our training was successful because it was a partnership between the African Interfaith Youth Network, the African Women of Faith Network, the Religions for Peace Youth Media team, and it included associated members from the African Council of Religious Leaders. So it reaches a wider audience and unite people of different faith through existing networks. Then we said strengthen women and youth networks. It's an opportunity to empower and equip women and youth with the necessary required knowledge and skills to promote their work. If we use social media in the correct, efficient way, we can bring about the desired positive changes we wish to see in the world quicker. And one of the positives of COVID-19 is that it has pushed us to communicate with each other on a global level beyond borders, time and distance, beyond nationality and identity. And then we said build intergenerational solidarity and partnership. And this is one of the comments that Fernando made as well about intergenerational. By having a training between youth and seniors, it provided an opportunity to learn from each other, bringing that tradition to impart skills and knowledge between generations to unite and empower each other. And then lastly, we said aim for a multi-religious unified identity. As an interfaith organization, reach out to unite, advocate, and bring people of various faiths together for a common cause in service to humanity and to the divine. And one of the positives out of this is that we got so much feedback from the women saying that, now they feel confident to share their interfaith work online. They didn't know they could do all these things online on Facebook and Twitter and how to do these things. So they were just so grateful and they were like so happy. And they were like, it resulted in them creating more accounts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and to be more open and share about their work.
Thank you for that. The PowerPoint presentation that you were sharing is so inspiring to see. And the importance of training, in using these online sources is so vital. And the important point of building your confidence to be able to do these things and go out and inspire others is key. So thank you for sharing that with us. So I want to thank all the panelists for their inspiring thoughts and reflections so far. And now I would like to turn to the audience for a Q&A session. For the audience members, please remember to type your question in the chat box and note if it's for a particular panelist. One question that I already have seen come up a couple of times in the chat box, I'll turn to Fernando to start around, and this is a big question, it's 3 parts, but what challenges have you encountered in promoting interfaith solidarity within your work during COVID-19? And what are the current gaps that you see and exist in promoting this solidarity, and what recommendations would you give to civil society and governments looking to further their engagement in this area?
Yes, that's a good question. Actually, we've been facing a lot of challenges now, and we have encountered a lot of challenges when promoting interfaith solidarity within our work during this COVID-19 pandemic. So first, of course, the rise of hate speech campaign on social media is very, very huge, huge issue now in our country. Hate speech against members of religious minority groups and those who are regarded as infidels, or in the language of common language here used is kafir, for instance, from Arabic language, and also for those who are regarded deviant to the mainstreaming religions in the country, because we have 6 recognized religions officially in this country. So this hate speech campaign has been an increased phenomenon now, exacerbated with the spread of fake news, resulting in the stigmatization and more particularly the humanization of others who take different paths, like politics or religious affiliations or ethnicity. Secondly, another challenge is hate speech is by religious clerics. This is religious clerics against other people of religious or political affiliations. This is very strong and very emerging issue now in the country. So we are facing phenomenon of having clerics who have less attachment to religious literacy, both textual and contextual, yet they are influential to some religious followers. So this phenomenon is what Tom Nichols calls in his book as the death of expertise. People just read from Google, then scroll down, scroll up from Google, and then they start spreading fake news, misinformation, also speech which contains hatred. And thirdly, there is a stereotype actually emerging and also developing, stereotype of Christianization or Islamization. On some occasions, this stereotype is still seen to happen very, very often. A few times ago, when a few weeks ago, when church deaconess, and I invited young people in the village from Christian and Muslim backgrounds to addressing the impact of the mining activities on their lands, we were accused of doing Christianization agenda. So this is quite a serious challenge for us when addressing about social justice, about human rights, but we are we are accused of doing Christianization agenda. The same also when Muslims do social works, they are accused of doing Islamizations. And also the fourth challenge is the rise of identity politics. Identity politics, a religion now has been very often and very often used as a very cheap commodity for politics in this country. In the next, I think next week on the 9th of December, 272 districts in Indonesia out of 500 something areas will do local elections, and we we were aware that some of the local elections, some of the politicians will also use identity politics for winning their position. And then also what the current gaps, shall I, okay. The current gaps that exist in here in promoting interfaith solidarity, I have two answers to that questions. First is we still do have the majority minority terminology of religions in the public space. So this existing gap has resulted in the false understanding of tolerance. You know, as a consequence to that, tolerance is being regarded, is very frequently defined as a gift or a compensation for those minority groups to exist in the majority milieu or environment. Secondly, the shrinking public space. Unlike 1 decade ago, at least, yeah, people become anxious now and more careful to talk about others' religions, about religious symbols, about cross, about hijab, about Quran, about scriptures, lyrics, etc. The existing draconian laws like blasphemy law, because for my thesis, I wrote about blasphemy law. So the draconian laws like blasphemy law have jailed hundreds of people for being accused of blasphemies against religions, against the orthodoxy of religions, against the religious symbols. So during this pandemic, already 34 cases of blasphemy have been filed in the police. The state has been the subject now to violate freedom of religion or belief in particular. So I have one recommendation actually. So the state equal treatment must be the state's measure in order to to provide free and equal opportunities and treatment for all. So Indonesia, you know, Indonesia has been legally bound to comply with international consensus that Indonesia has ratified. Indonesia is very well known for having ratified already many two covenants and also many conventions that protect human rights and equal freedoms for all. Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you. I mean, you raised a number of important points around the rise in hate speech and misinformation, identity politics. I know even here in the US with our election, it's everywhere. And it's just the recommendation that you gave around equal treatment is really valid. And I'm really curious to hear from Kosar as well, what current gaps you see that exist in Finland or other places in the world, and what recommendations you would give to civil society and governments looking to further their engagement in this area.
Thank you. When thinking about Finland, I would say we don't have that much, gaps that we need to focus on. For a moment, we are now doing more and more interfaith collaboration in Finland, and as a moment, there is this research done whether we should have this religious dialogue center here in Finland, and it's just now that they're making a research. Is there a need for this or not? But at the moment, we are doing, I think, pretty well. And at the moment, I don't see that much challenges that we are facing. Of course, what Fernando mentioned about the hate speech and stigmatization, it is happening here, but not at that extent as it is happening in Indonesia. If I give an example, for example, in this today's Finnish national newspaper, there was an article about the fact that a quarter of all the corona cases here in Finland are those who don't speak Finnish language as their native language. And it was also highlighted that the number is big because when comparing to the share of the total population, it's around 8%. And And it also said in the article that even though Finland is offering the information in many languages, the motivation of these immigrants to follow this recommendation is something that the government cannot help. It's up to the immigrants whether they will follow the recommendations or not. This is actually a two-edged sword, so to say. I mean, like, it is true that the corona has spread among the immigrants, and I believe it's very important to make a research about this pandemic and how it's spreading and publish them. But these two type of trends create the so-called the victim mentality among the immigrants, because they feel that the stigmatization is that the all immigrants are not following the regulations and those who are like living in Finland. So that's the only thing maybe I could bring up in here. But and the other thing that I mentioned previously was that there should be more open discussions about peace building and interfaith solidarity in schools, where young people can get to know more about the work and how they could be involved. And I have also heard that there have been some, in some cases, around the world, that one of the challenge is the language barrier. I don't know how big challenge is this, and is it possible to conquer it somehow other way? That's actually pretty much what I come up with now. Oh, one thing more I just remember is that I think what we all share when we think about the challenges and the gap when doing this interfaith work is that we all share the same thing, that we are kind of lacking of resources, both financial and human resources. I don't know how do you other fields, but at least it is what we have faced here in Finland. Yes, that's all.
Thank you, Kosar. I mean, that's a really interesting article that you wrote up about the stigmatization and the double-edged sword. And I'd love to actually see the research to see like if that's actually true. I have a feeling that it's not true, that maybe they're not reaching the communities because they're not doing enough active outreach specifically for those who need it. But we'll see the community. And putting them all into one bucket, we need to do some more intersectionality research here. So I'll leave it to you to go to your Finnish female leadership to take that up. We'll be right behind you. Marilyne, how about you? What current gaps are you seeing in South Africa, and what recommendations would you give to civil society and governments looking to further their engagement in your country?
Okay, so before I just answer the question, I just wanted to talk about what Kosha said about resources, and that resources is unlimited and it hinders our work. And one of the most inspirational thing I've came across is that Religions for Peace have opened up a humanitarian fund. And through the African Council of Religious Leaders, they have been trying to help over 12 countries in Africa. So, and this has been very inspirational because as a youth media team representative, I had to interview someone from Mauritius, and they shared their work that they did and how they used, they created a book during COVID to build resilience. And so I just wanted to say that, yes, with the resources, we can do a lot more. And I found it very inspiring for this humanitarian fund and how each country is taking this humanitarian fund and using it in a different way to help their society. And then to talk about the gaps, I would say, like, for me, first, generally, one of the gaps I see is like, how do we translate our discussions, dialogues, and webinars into solid action? Because I feel like I've attended so many webinars and we talk and talk and talk, but our interfaith work cannot just be about talk all the time. We have to walk our talk. We have to be the example. And, like Mahatma Gandhi said, be the change you wish to see in the world. So we have to follow up with positive goal-orientated actions. And I think that's where we'll find more success in interfaith work. And then the other gap I see is that we cannot work in isolation. You know, everything is so segregated and separate. And like civil society and governments need to build strong interfaith partnerships with people of faith and let them in. Give them a space to help as well, as they have a unique set of expertise in interfaith knowledge and experience. And I'll give you an example is like for gender-based violence. Towards women especially, it has multiplied like by drastically since COVID, because everybody is in lockdown at home. And you know, there was one incident in South Africa where a couple was fighting and a police intervened, and because of the brutality, the police ended up getting shot and he ended up dying. And they were saying like, what if a priest intervened, and a religious leader who's of interfaith, and he brought a different dynamic to help these people and to calm them down, calm the situation down, and work differently. So I think it's like we all in this together. We have to build strong alliances because we can reach our common goals faster. But like it's not segregated, you know. And I always say people of faith are people of heart. So they have a bigger vision to mobilize masses for action. And another example I'll give you is that I attended a lot of climate webinars because I'm involved in a lot of climate action. And there was one webinar by Faith in Nature. And we also did another webinar with the Yale University, the Yale Forum, Interfaith Forum. And we spoke about religious ecologies and religious environmentalism. And I was telling them, like, you know, when I do climate work on the ground level, like, you know, activists will like look at you and like wonder, like, what are you talking about when you're talking about interfaith values and seeing the interconnectedness with nature and Mother Nature, and like, and finding the connection between nature and translating it into our actions so that we can like, you know, see that it's not segregated, have a holistic vision that spirituality, religion, and the things that we do, even if it's climate action, whether it's through religious ecologies or environmentalism, it's all interconnected. And when we see this, we can make bigger strides. So that was like one of the things that came up with the climate action. So I just wanted to highlight that we need to have a holistic vision, see things interconnected, and build stronger alliances and partnerships with each other as well.
Thank you. There's so much to unpack there about this holistic vision, this interconnectedness, walking the talk, being the change, not working in isolation. You raised a really important point, I think, for the South African context, and that there's been a huge spotlight on the country because of the rise in gender-based violence, and seeing that. I know Sanke has been doing work there on that. The whole "Am I Next" hashtag protests. And just to raise that, you know, all of this interconnectedness, the shadow pandemic that we're seeing, you know, for example, with women and with gender-based violence, or the rise in unpaid care work and domestic work in the home, all of this being so interconnected. So thank you for raising all of these really important points. Now I would like to start with your quick closing remarks. Any reflections, any final thoughts that you each want to share? Let me turn to Kosar first, if you'd like to give your final remarks.
Great, thank you. I would like to say at the end of the day, it's a very reassuring news that there is so much more interfaith solidarity and peace in the world than confrontations, even though they are the ones who will get to the headlines in the news. But it's very assuring for me, at least, to know that there is actually a lot of interfaith solidarity and peace in this world. And in order to keep up the good work, we need to collaborate, we need to support one another, we need to share our thoughts and unite. That's actually what I want to tell you all in this end. Thank you.
Thank you. Fernando, final thoughts?
Yes, I try to keep encouraging people, young people, to take part in the peace building. So So don't try to make any limitation against our own or their self-defined creativities and capabilities, because we highly appreciate any contribution made for peace. So in 2014, we created a campaigning theme called so-called Talent for Peace, initiated by Indonesian Lutheran youths. So the Talent for Peace aims at encouraging everybody with any backgrounds of profession, study, faith, capacity, capabilities, and everything can contribute for something. An engineer can contribute for peace with what she or he can do to protect climate, for instance. And and secondly, I would like to keep encouraging anybody to always create meeting space for all people of faith as a common platform. So through meeting space, we can do multiculturalism projects. We can promote diversity instead of imposing sameness on each other, finding the same language of humanity and human rights. Because, you know, different religions, different contexts, different perspectives can also different have language of humanity. Even like when I did webinar on human rights, on freedom of religion or belief, my Muslim friend has a very he has very he debated about my human rights perspective, but we actually have the same the same actually perspective about how to respect and also to create a peace within this context of modernization, for instance. But we only just need to find the same language of humanity. And also, last but not least, I keep telling to my friend, to my Muslim friends, to my Buddhist friends, and to my Hindu friends, my friends, this COVID time is the best way for us to proselytize without mentioning, like me, for instance. I can do. I mean, this COVID time is a good way for me as a Christian, as a Christian youth, to show people that I can do as a Christian good thing, and also you also can do as a Muslim. You can do also a good thing. That's actually the proselytization, the meaning of proselytization in my understanding. Thank you.
Thank you. Marilyne, final thoughts?
Okay, for me, I would say that whatever you do, be inclusive. Always remember that whatever interfaith work we do, it's not about us, you know. It's if it's always about us, then it becomes a thing of our ego, right? It's about the people you're engaging with, how you can serve them, how you can uplift them, how you can inspire them, help them grow, empower them. And then it comes from a place of humility and selflessness. Because especially in Hindu faith, we are taught that, you know, our lives are a service to humanity, right? And what do you leave behind before you die, you know? What do you give to community and what do you give to others? And so always come from a place to welcome the other, break down barriers of hate, violence, discrimination, and to change perceptions. We have to approach from a holistic, have an holistic vision to be inclusive. And I would say that also, like, don't be afraid to share your work. You know, you see on social media, there's so much negatives, you know. We need to change the narratives and to inspire people. So like I find when I share my work on social media profiles, people are asking questions and they want to get involved and they want to sign up and they want to be a part of the action to serve. So it influences society positively and it changes the narratives on social media. So instead of being bogged down by problems and the negatives and seeing a despondent world, we can see a world of positives and that people are on the ground level. People are doing something. People are active and people want to, like, you know, work towards a world of peace and unity. And then we also see at the same time for us personally, that we are involved with something bigger and it becomes more meaningful, and you end up making a positive difference in someone's life. So that's what drives me to like want to do interfaith work, want to be involved in all these things. That's what drives me to wake up in the morning and attend these 45 webinars that I've done in all these months, is because I want to serve and I want to help and I want to contribute in whatever way I know I possibly can. So yeah.
Thank you. You make my job so easy by just lining it up so easy for me. In remembering, as you said, to be inclusive, it's not about us, but about the people that we serve. So I want to thank all of you for providing your wisdom and your expertise today. And I look forward to changing the narrative together to make it a more positive and fruitful world. So now I would like to turn for closing remarks. I want to give the floor to Mr. Pranil Rajakumar from the World Council of Churches, who will be followed by Dr. Muhammad El Sanusi, the Executive Director from Religious and Traditional Peacemakers. Over to you, Pranil.
Thank you, Jessica. With deep gratitude for the words of wisdom and the visions of hope that our three panelists have articulated, let me reiterate that now is the time for what can be called the dialogue of the hands, where we build our different faith convictions into common action. In a global landscape where our economics drives wedges between communities, and where our politics wield religion as the preferred weapon of hate, and both economics and politics intersect to build walls that make it easier for, as they say, a coffee bean to cross borders than the one who cultivates it, the challenge that remains for us is to not lose hope. The World Council of Churches that I represent and the Vatican recently published a document entitled Serving a Wounded World in Interreligious Solidarity. Among other things, the document recognized that the idealism and energy of young people can be an antidote to the temptation of cynicism in the endeavor to heal our wounded world. We saw some glimpses of that idealism and energy today, as our participants articulated very eloquently what it means to think of our religions not as fortresses to be defended, but as wellsprings for the flourishing of all life. They challenged me to think of the necessity of cultivating interreligious solidarity as what can be called a habit of the heart, so that solidarity does not just become a question of what we do, but a question of who we are as people of faith. They also reminded us of the urgency of intergenerational partnerships and helped us to rethink, in some ways, the traditional ways in which faith communities have engaged with youth, namely the deficit model that looks at youth as problems to be solved, and the dependence model that reinforces cultures of experience as a way of excluding the young. And today, as we reflect from a COVID-19 context that has urged us to think of a new normal, interreligious solidarity can be an important pathway to a new normal, where conflict and competition are replaced by compassion and collaboration. And moving to this new normal probably obligates us to engage creatively and concretely with one important question that I'd like to end with. And that question is, how can we, as people of faith and goodwill, refuse to be co-viruses in the pandemic of hate and instead provide an antidote of hope. With these words, let me introduce Dr. Mohammed El-Sanusi, the Executive Director of the Network for Religions and Traditional Peacemakers, a global network that bridges grassroots peacemakers and global players to work towards sustainable peace, to offer his closing remarks. Dr. El-Sanusi.
Thank you so much, my good friend Penel. And through you, I wanted really to thank the World Council of Churches and the partnership. And of course, I want to thank also Dr. Sivini and the LWF, the Lutheran World Federation, for the partnership with the network to come up with this dynamic webinar. And really, above all, I want to thank you. I want to thank the panel. Very dynamic youth. We heard their stories. Here is quite, inspiring. Really, today's webinar, it gave me a lot of hope here, and how to see the youth communities and the youth leadership are really taking the lead here. So I want to just say thank you so much for reminding all of us about the imperatives and stories coming behind these imperatives and how important solidarity is. You provided us by a number of recommendations, very practical recommendations, and your ideas of, not leaving anyone behind is really powerful, trying to include everyone as we push forward, to become a community of dialogue, And the youth plays a major role here. And COVID-19 reminded all of us how important it is to invest, in youth. That's very important. We saw the participation of youth in all of these, religious institutions, and how they have been critical in working closely with those who are leading these institutions and being at the table to facilitate many things. So really, it gives me hope to see all of that happening. Our challenge is that we need the youth to lead this movement. We understand that 84% of the population in this planet, they somehow affiliate themselves with religion. So the young religious leaders are quite important for advancing peace and solidarity. Since this concept of solidarity we discussed today, it's a great mechanism. It is really a necessary mechanism to advance our interfaith dialogue and partnership and understanding. So with that, I really just want to thank you, the panel. I want to thank the organizers here, and also I want to thank my own, colleague here, Jessica, for ably leading this discussion. Thank you so much, Professor Sivini, again.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mohammed El-Sanusi. I'd like to invite everyone else to just show up again, just on behalf of, let's just make sure that, on behalf of the Lutheran World Federation, the World Council of Churches, and the Network for Religious and Traditional Peacemakers. I think we want to thank our fantastic panelists, Kosa, Fernando, and Marilyne, and also our amazing moderator, Jessica, and of course, Sarah, who has been working very much behind the scenes together with me. We would all like to thank all of you for staying for this quite extended and substantial webinar together on this topic. And truly, we want to celebrate the youth as agents of change, and we take to heart all that you have spoken to us. And thank you also for everyone who has shared your comments in the chat. We will be in touch with you. We have a recording of this, and if you're interested to